don't care what your mama told you, this is gonna be bad. Better have yourself and your family a plan.
All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, aka Marf, and today we have breaking news left and right. We have events going on all over the world. Stick around. This is going to be a very packed show. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in the show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough.
Better have yourself and your family a plan. I don't care what your mama told you, this is gonna be bad. Better have yourself and your family a plan.
All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, aka Marf, and this is Marfoogle News. Today, we have a ton to go over in a short amount of time. So if you've never been here before, remember you can always go to our website, marfooglenews.com, and not only sign up for our email alerts in case something happened to us. That's where we would get a hold of you. But you can also get direct notifications. That way, if any of the platforms are not doing that very well or 3 days late, you can, of course, get the notifications directly through us. Now, if you also go there, you'll see that every single episode we put a full bibliography. That means we have a source for every single thing that we show you here, whether it's a picture, a tweet, a video, a document, whatever it is going to be there. Now, when you go to the website, you will see that you will actually have today's thumbnail on the main page, and once you do that, you will see every single link, tweet, video, picture, document that we are going to show you here today. Also, at the very bottom, you'll see a yellow bar. That is web-only content. That is the stuff that is too hot for TV or we couldn't fit into the show. There's a whole other show down there, so make sure to go check it out. Let's bring in my co-host / internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I am doing just fine.
Also, remember on the website, marfooglenews.com/friends, you will find all of our moderators, all of their channels, if they're authors, their books are there, and of course, all of the channels that we appreciate, think that are spreading information, pushing people up, or we personally vouch for. So all of those channels are right there, so make sure to go check it out. All right, let's get into the first piece here. Elon Musk's Starlink will reposition satellites to provide Florida with more internet access as residents recover from Hurricane Ian. Dex, this was kind of expected. He kind of made a mention of this early on when he was talking about Hurricane Ian. And then, of course, we've seen him in Cuba and in several other places use his Starlink. I think Cuba was recently as well when the storm went over there. Where are some other notable places he ended up using Starlink? Obviously, UKR. But can you think of some other ones that ended up being used?
Well, yeah, anytime there seems to be an outage, I think the other one we reported was the iCountry in the ME with all of the outages that were happening there. And that was done by design. They were shutting down the internet because of the unrest that was happening in the protests. So he moved his equipment in there, too, to help them out.
That's right. They were essentially talking smack about their government, so they shut off the internet. And we think that of course, wherever we are, whether that be Europe, Canada, or the U.S., that they wouldn't do that. But obviously, a lot of us think that they would. So it might help, right? Imagine if the U.S. turned off our internet on purpose because we were dissenting. Well, I guess imagining is all we do now, but hopefully we'll never have to see it in real life. It says Elon Musk's satellite internet company Starlink will help provide broadband internet access to people in Florida affected by Hurricane Ian. So if you are in the path of that, hopefully you'll be able to try to use that. I don't know. So if you, how do they end up handing these things out? Or obviously a person without the receiver can't use it. So what do they do? Do they hook it up to a Wi-Fi and let people use that around? Or I wonder how they're actually distributing, if anything. How can people access it if they don't have the unit?
Well, I think the first and foremost will be the locations where they have people doing triaging and helping, and then setting up locations for the family members that are displaced to come and, use the internet. While, not necessarily that they could use it at their house, but they can come to a location. So I think they're deploying and trying to create those hotspot areas for them.
Well, I guess, and there are people that don't even have houses right now. So prayers goes out to everybody in Florida. I'm really, really sorry that all of that happened. Obviously, if you live in Florida, you know that it's possible. But that one really, really hit hard. And we know a lot of Foogle family members that had a lot of big problems. Somebody actually commented, I don't know if it was an email or a comment a few days ago, and said, I think it was a comment, and they said that they survived in an RV between two big rig trucks. So they parked their RV between two huge, 40-yard trailers, and they ended up, surviving through it, being parked in between. So pretty smart people and clever people out there as well. Dex, go ahead.
Well, and a lot of the people in and around the areas, especially the areas that were hit the hardest, but even the locations outside of that are having shortages now, just because of the demand and the lack of the ability for them to transport stuff in. So, everything is still in high demand, whether it's food, water, all that stuff. The shelves were emptied before the hurricane hit, and they're still empty now. So people are still having a hard time finding stuff.
Well, prayers go out to everybody in Florida trying to locate a place to be, a place to live, or a place to eat. I know that a lot of people have been affected. And then India loses contact with Mars orbiter. It says that India's Mars orbiter mission, or MOM, may have finally reached the end of its operations after 8 years spent orbiting the red planet. Ground stations operated by Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO, have lost communication with the spacecraft. The precise cause isn't yet clear. The orbiter may have run out of propellant, MOM's battery may drained beyond the safe operating limit, or an automated maneuver may have cut communications, according to media reports. Having operated at Mars for 8 years, MOM, also called Mangayan, has far exceeded its expected mission life of just 6 to 10 months. The craft was launched in November 2013 and entered orbit around Mars in September of 2014. So it actually lasted about 8 more years than they thought it would. To be honest, and we've covered a lot of space-related stories, I don't know if we've ever covered the India's orbiter, and I didn't actually realize they had one. Maybe I've covered this before, but I don't think so. I would remember the MOM nickname, that's for sure. What is not surprising to me, though, around that same amount time, all of these countries were all of a sudden, super active in trying to go to the moon or to Mars. It was like out of nowhere, from nobody trying to go to everybody trying to go. Even the Middle E countries were trying to go. You, of course, had Israel launch what was it? I think it was a lander towards the moon, and it ended up crashing into the moon, or at least that's what they say. So what do you think about that? Let me know in the comments down below. Drum Master Flex, thank you. I appreciate you subscribing. 15 minutes ago, DDog79, thank you. 15 minutes ago, thank you for subscribing. Nikki Love, thank you for subscribing. Hollis Jesse, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for subscribing. Sandra Wiles, Bobby Griffiths, and Melanie Kimball, thank you and welcome to the Marfia. We're going to talk about here in just a minute. We're going to get into, of course, Europe and all of the crazy stuff going on. Japan told people to shelter from nuclear missiles or from ballistic missiles, or at least they instructed them that they may. We have Sweden sends diving vessel to probe leaking Nord Stream. That's going to provide some information, or hopefully. And then, of course, NK fired that ballistic missile. And FBI is sent to the Pacific. We have a NATO carrier. This is all getting really, really nuts. So stick around. It's gonna get nuts. I'll give a warning before we get into the really panic, anxiety type stuff, that if you don't want to watch a scary movie, then you'll have a chance to tune out. And then bipedal robot developed at Oregon State achieves Guinness World Records of 100 meters. Now, there is a video of this. You can go watch it. What I was expecting when I saw the headline at first was this thing was just going to, go 100 miles. It's actually pretty slow. When you see the video, you'll notice that it's probably a lot slower than our fastest human. But the fact is, it is bipedal robot that is doing it. So it is this thing. I'll show you a picture of it right here. It says Cassie the robot, invented at the Oregon State University College of Engineering and produced by OSU spin-out company Agility Robotics, has established a Guinness World Record for the fastest 100 meters by a bipedal robot. Now that 100 meters, which is 400 feet, Cassie clocked the historic time of 24 seconds. I guess that's, okay, so 400 feet divided by 4 would be 100. So wait a second. 25 seconds. How fast is that? If somebody wants to do the math on that, that's not my strong suit. But when you see the video, maybe it was faster than I think. That doesn't seem too fast, to be honest. And then it says Oregon State University. I wonder what the human comparison would be. But the point is, these bipedal robots that could potentially replace us one day, the science and the actual robots are progressing really fast. As far as this goes, this is going to be a walking robot. Now think about this. If somebody did not have legs, though, or did not have a lower half, if they ended up building something like this for somebody like that and put a bracket or some sort of brace so somebody could actually wear this and walk and run. That would be a trip. Dex, go ahead.
9.3 miles per hour.
Wait, so the fastest human is like 23? Isn't it Usain Bolt or something, and he can run over 20 miles per hour? I'm pretty sure Usain has that beat, but by a long shot. But the point is,
the average male runs 8 miles per hour, and average female is 6.5 miles per hour, according to Google.
Okay, so yeah. So it's not that fast. If I can run it, then it's not that fast. But the point is, though, that the robots are now the bipedal robots, not the ones on 4 legs like the dogs. They're starting to run as fast as humans. And then $1.5 million floating home prototype sinks into the water just as it's unveiled. Now, the president of Panama was actually here. I wanted to remind you guys of the movie Waterworld way back. It was definitely, I want to say, in the 90s. I don't remember exactly when it was put out, but it's at least 20 years old. This movie actually went out and it was a massive, massive budget. They spent millions and millions of dollars, and it was a gigantic flop. I personally think it's a great movie, and if you watch it today, you will see that it has a lot of predictive programming. And I don't know if they actually meant to, or this was just a kind of a fantasy world that they saw the future as. But basically, it shows the world has ended. The world is covered in water. It's basically kind of like a biblical flood, like Noah, like Noah's Ark, only everyone lives on the water. So the whole movie premise is there is no land anymore. The entire planet's covered in water, and everybody lives on these kind of floating homes or floating cities. And the movie is quite a trip. If you've seen it, then you would know. It had Kevin Costner, and Kevin Costner ends up evolving and having gills. But the point is, this is something that you don't realize it yet. This is part of our future. And the first part of it, which is what they're showing, this was a prototype home, and the thing looked goofy before it sank, but it had this kind of like outlook, circle outlook, almost like a radar tower in the middle of it, and it was floating, and it had like a deck, and it had some other stuff, but it was a floating home. And the Panama president even came because This is a huge deal because they're talking about the 72% of the world that is covered in water. They want to make an eco-sustainable paradise. That's what they said. And this is a prototype of a house that could potentially forever live on the water. It could take in water and turn it. I'm pretty sure this has a desalination thing on it, so it can actually turn salt water into real water, or I mean, not real water, but drinkable, potable water. And the thing is an absolute trip, but it sank at its actual release. So this is, as comedic as it is, this is something that they're actually trying to do in the future and near future. It says the Sea Pod, built by Panama-based technology company Ocean Builders, is meant to be a self-sustaining, eco-restorative home that floats above the waves. At its grand unveiling on September 22nd, the futuristic luxury model home, meant to float on the water, toppled over in front of an audience that included Panama's president, Laurentino Cortizo. It says the Sea Pod, developed by the ocean innovation technology company Ocean Builders, was meant to be the first of many pieces of revolutionary blue technology. The company's mission statement says, meant to make the 72% of the world that is covered into water into an eco-sustainable paradise. So think about this. In the near future, they're going to tell us that, of course, and this is a trip. If they're thinking ahead, or if there's something that we don't know about, like, say, a massive flood, they say in 2030, because of the moon's wobble, we'll have catastrophic floods. And then, of course, today we're going to talk about it. One of Putin's subs, the one that carries the Poseidon drone, or the Poseidon system, essentially a underwater nuke drone that can cause 300-foot waves, or so is claimed, that just disappeared today. So if some sort of event happened, like a drone let off a nuke underwater and sent a 300-foot wave over the entire United States, you would have to utilize the water as far as a water world. I mean, like, this is straight out of a movie. But I wonder, what are they actually looking at that's making them try to develop this stuff? Are the rich and elite actually going? Do they know something we don't? Do they know that the world will be covered in water? And are they, looking at developing these things for our future? Go ahead, Dex.
Hey, quick question. I remember seeing one of those home fix-it shows, and it was a floating house, and it was like a whole neighborhood of floating houses in your neck of the woods, like somewhere in Seattle. Are you familiar with that?
Well, Lake Union has a bunch, but you mean like it's not the guy that
it was like it was literally like a neighborhood, and I just looked it up in Google Images, and I see tons of these homes, and they just call it Lake Union, Seattle's Lake Union, and it's got like floating homes everywhere. Talk about rich and elite, but and it's not the same thing as this pod, but they're actually floating homes, multi-story. It's kind of crazy.
So wait. So actually, because I grew up here and we've had those since I was born. So I just kind of thought that those were everywhere that had like ports and stuff. Do they not have those in other places? I'd love to hear from chat. The floating homes, I know that a lot of people know about those, but in Lake Union in Seattle, where most of the rich live nearby or work, that's where Amazon is. It's where all sorts of big tech businesses are. But a lot of people live on these floating boats in Lake Union. This is how some of the rich and elite, they see our future, which is kind of a trip. But yeah, most of those are like these square kind of barge homes. And what would be really cool is if you had one like that could move on its own. A lot of the ones down in Lake Union, those are barges. So it's essentially, it's a square box on a floating thing. And if you have to move it, then you tow it. I don't know if there's any that have a motor. Obviously, you'd say, well, that's a yacht. But I mean like a house that could actually move by itself, that's not in a yacht or a boat setup. That is what kind of the future is looking at. Look at all these rich people buying these crazy submarine mansions. We're talking about a cruise line kind of ship as big as a military sub, 600 plus feet, and it's a luxury home or mansion inside with something like 20,000 square feet of house inside. I mean, if you could think about how big that is for an underwater sub, and this is what the elites are buying. That's not according to me. That's according to Forbes and other magazines that are covering these ultra elite submarines and houseboat things that the rich are buying. And there's so much. I mean, these are $2 billion submarines that they don't even list them. Nobody knows who buys them. It's all classified. Well, not classified. It's all hidden stuff. Whoever is buying them, like Mr. Gates and Elon Musk and Bezos, they're not telling the public about them. So if you know inside information about those, or you work on them, I bet you there's some, people that are just regular people that work on boats and marine gear. I bet you there's some of you that know. I'd love to know, and if it doesn't get you in trouble, let me know who's buying them. But yeah, what do you guys think about this? And do you have houseboats where you guys are? None in Colorado. Yeah, well, most likely in what is it, Kansas or something, but I would think that anywhere where there was a lake, you would have these things. Mama Bear is here. Let's see here. Carol Willette, thank you. Yes. Crop Duster, what's going on? Preston Martin. Hey, Greg Martin and Preston Martin. Hope you guys are brothers. Bring in some family. Mike's Big Epiphany. We've got Corpse Maker. Charity Sullivan, Storm Dancer. Subs Sync 2. Yeah, that's true. Usually when they're attacked, though. Camel Flannel, what's going on? We've got Carol McLean. Hello. Nice to see you. Houseboats all around Florida. Yeah. And then Jay the Jeweler. I think what Dex is talking about too is the houseboats that are all interconnected and people can walk from one to the other. There are like a small community that have that. Mr. Floyd, Northern Girl Hobbies, Tan Sedan Man, thanks for coming in. And then Mary Laffery. Lowry? Mary Lowry. I think I'm saying that right. Tell me if I'm wrong. Thank you for your support. Thank you for supporting Independent. And then Brett Butler says, big what if, but what if one or two of these doomed torpedoes hits a target like the subduction zone of west of Seattle? What happens? Brett Butler, I kind of wonder about that submarine, I forget what it's called, the Novorisk or Luberhunsk, Luv. Dex, do you remember what the name of the top secret Russian sub that ended up averting a planetary catastrophe? Was that the Lubinsk? Something like that. Either way, that submarine back a few years ago, 17 sailors died. That actually caught fire, or they said it caught fire. And it was very strange. It's a top secret sub that even they say our government doesn't even know much about. They know the basic layout and how it is. It can actually go deeper than almost any sub because of how the infrastructure is of the inside. It's kind of like balls inside of a submarine, and it's actually named after the balls that clowns juggle in Vlad's country. And then that submarine, 17 people perished, and they said that they died heroes because they prevented a planetary catastrophe. That was what was said at their actual funerals by one of the high-up military members in the Russian military. So it's always plagued me what the heck really happened there. Go ahead.
Yeah, Losharik.
It's like, okay, I totally had that at the tip of my tongue. OX, thank you for subscribing. Celtic Warrior, thank you for your support. Mir504, thank you for your support. You know, you can always write a comment there. Mir, thanks for sticking around and being here for a long time now. Thank you. So yeah, this is a trip, and what do you guys think about it? Let me know in the comments below. Are you looking forward to a sea world? Real quick, I do want to remind you, with everything that's going on, all of our affiliates have real purpose. We actually believe in all of the products that we are affiliated with, and we believe that the products that we are trying to recommend are ones that can either save your life, make your life comfortable, or possibly make your life more convenient. As far as the EMP Shield, anything that you want to keep running after an EMP, such as a car, RV, a motorcycle, or even your home or your generators or even your ham radio, EMP Shield makes a device for. This is the same company that's actually outfitted agencies like DOD, DHS, and of course the DEMSO team helping protect the Texas grid. If you want to get the same kind of protection for your home, your RV, your cars, anything that runs with a motor, then I would highly recommend going over to marfooglenews.com/EMP. They are also the only company that makes an energy solar generator EMP shield. So again, you can get that for the Energy Flex 1500. And I don't know if they have it for the Kodiak, but I'm sure that they will have one. It will probably work with that one, but again, you can actually EMP shield your Energy Flex 1500. Go over to marfooglenews.com/EMP. This will actually prevent any of your devices and ground the signal in less than 500 trillionths of a second before it's able to fry your car, fry your home, fry all of those devices. So again, marfooglenews.com/EMP. It also stops and prevents CMEs or a Carrington level event destroying those things as well. So make sure to go check it out. Thank you. Every purchase, you'll get $50 off, and you'll be helping our independent channel. All right, Dex, do you want to talk about Gates? And you actually didn't know about this until we both found out late about this because I could not believe we somehow missed this. I ended up seeing it first on, I want to say, Russell Brand. Russell Brand ended up covering it about 5 days later. Oh, no, Tim Pool is who covered it the first where I saw this. And I could not believe that this was not bigger news. I showed everybody earlier that Snopes, fact-checking this, it still says research in progress. They don't want to put a true or false. I think that they're doing that because they don't want to put a true on it because that's what he said. That's his direct quote. Dex, do you want to read the actual quote that was said? It's kind of freaky.
Well, I sort of agree. I think that they don't know what to do with this one. So, but I think the quote is, "I admit that political polarization may bring it all to an end. We're going to have a hung event. It's in November, and a conflict, a civil conflict." That's the end of it. That's the specific quote he said. He says, "I have no expertise in that, and I'm not going to divert any of my money to that because I wouldn't know how to spend it." So it's clear what he's talking about. And it's clear that, he's talking about something he doesn't understand or would know how to fix because he's not going to put his money into it. But he continues to talk about the polarization, a lack of trust and things like that. So he is not dodging this. This is not a misspeak. This is him saying that there's this issue of polarization in our country. We're probably going to have a hung event, if not this round, maybe in the next round.
By the way, you just said we're probably. That's a huge...
Yeah, he says we're going to. Yeah, you're right. He says we're going to have a hung event.
Just adding that changes it all. Yeah. If he said we may, we might, we are probably, he just says we're going to have a hung event and a civil war. This is his quote, and that's the big thing. But because we don't even want to say that, right? We add probably in by, subconscious. He didn't. That's insane. And then bring an end to it all. Like, what the hell is he talking about? This is like, Dex, what do you think as far as, by the way, I've been talking with a lot of family members about this and about the fact that Gates is also the biggest investor in farmland in the U.S. He's not the biggest investor in farmland because Xi probably, I don't know, Xi is probably getting up there as well. The country owns a ton of farmland in the U.S. But as far as Gates buying up this farmland, a lot of people have been talking about the financial collapse and talking about it all around the world. What's funny is we're here in the U.S. talking about inflation, but it's worldwide. In Europe, they have close to 10% inflation. In fact, Survival Lily in Austria just covered a whole bunch of things that are going on there. People are going into their private forests and cutting down wood and using their wood stoves because they can't afford stuff. Everything is at 10 plus percent inflation, everything else. It's like everywhere you are in the world, it's like we're going through the same thing, almost like, when we went through CV and everybody came together and worked together on that. And now I guess they're working together too on this whole collapse. Well, there are people that are worried that the currency will collapse. And by the way, a ton of currencies. If you look at the graphs, the US dollar is still like this, but the rest are like this. And it's scary to see how many currencies are dropping. And some think that they're all going to collapse and kind of crumble into the US dollar, and then the US dollar is going to crumble into something else, whether that be a digital currency that hides the problems of the past, whether that be an actual coin or something, a Bitcoin or gold. Some think that it might even fall into something tangible or something like land or farmland, or if something like food. I don't know. Again, I'm not a financial expert, but what I do see is a whole lot of signs pointing that the entire world is kind of going down the crapper. Do you agree? Do you think I'm crazy? Do your family members think you're crazy because you're saying some of this stuff? It's really bad. Dex, as far as, plus Mr. Gates, he also paid and funded for stuff right before the CV. And it was a drill, or basically this exercise, a simulation of exactly what ended up happening in 2019. That stuff that the whole world went through. So, and he's got billions of dollars invested in everything from media to, of course, infrastructure to politics. He actually takes credit for the Inflation Reduction Act. He has taken public credit for that, saying that he helped that through. That was the act, or the act that he helped with, right? We covered that probably a month ago.
That's correct. And I think if you were to ask everyone in chat right now if they think that he is connected and in the know, I don't think there's a single person that would say, no, he's disconnected and has no clue what's going on. I don't think there's a single person that would say he's not in with the elite. So when he makes statements like this, and again, thank you for correcting me. When I read it, I just naturally put it in there, right? Probably going to have that event. But no, he said it, like you said, he said it specifically, and he specifically said a civil conflict, right? So, I think if again, if everyone here sort of believes that this guy is in the know, this guy is very connected, he probably has his finger on a lot of different things, he's going to make a statement like this. He's not just shooting it off the hip and just thinking about it. He's speaking from inside information, I believe.
By the way, that was my impression of, first, if he has his fingers on things, he's playing the whole piano and he's puppeteering. What is really crazy about this whole thing with him is he is really... Here's the thing I don't get, is when people watch... So if you see any video on him, obviously there's kind of two sides politically, right? And they say that one side is more, conspiratorial, right? But when you go to any video on him, most of his videos, I think the comments are off, but you see all of these thoughts. It's like almost everybody you can talk to definitely knows all of the rumors about him, right? You see all of the crazy comments, and it's one subject that pretty much everybody agrees on. But somehow, is there people that that think he's just a normal guy that owns Microsoft and does a really, that he's a great philanthropist? Because that's how the media portrays it. That's how everybody portrays it. But it's like almost everybody with any kind of common sense, and I'm not even talking about one side or the other. It seems like everybody, even the people on the far left, are like, he's definitely like got some weird stuff going on. It's just weird to me because it doesn't matter that everybody knows he's in all these different circles. He was friends with EpiPen, flying on his planes. It doesn't matter, because when you have so much money and power, you're able to put your good stuff through media and just overwhelm people with that. So you make people that even question it look crazy, because all of the mainstream anchors with suits and ties on are saying, oh, he's a great guy, he's a philanthropist, he helps people, blah, blah, blah. And if you believe anything else, then you're crazy. But look at all the damn things he's got his hands in. It's scary to talk about. I almost think that they probably have, because the guy started Microsoft and all this. I just wonder if they have, how the algorithms find stuff. I'm like, if you even mention his name, his full name, probably has an automatic filter thing where they grab everything and then look at it. And if it's weird enough, they probably somehow, through a third party or something, it gets deleted or it gets, just wiped away. I even think double time. I'm like, I'm in the same area, right? If you say something about him, they could be like, "Oh, that guy's near you. He's, they'll claim you're a crazy person or something." Like, it's freaky. That's one guy that scares me. Like, I'm sorry, with all the connections and weird things, just to let you know, I'm a happy guy. I'm totally happy. I have no thoughts of anything bad. I think he's handsome. He's got great hair. His outfit's always well put together. Moving on. Increasing number of Chinese researchers leaving the U.S. out of fear. I guess I pronounced it wrong. I pronounced wrong. I guess I pronounced that wrong because it's leaving out of fear. So leaving the U.S. out of fear. It says that new study suggests the number of Xi researchers relocating to Xi's country from the U.S. increasing despite the end of the controversial Xi initiative earlier this year. It says the Asian American Scholar Forum, or the AASF, published a report titled Caught in the Crossfire, Fears of a Xi American Scientist. In its study, the association presented the results of its National Academic Climate Survey, showing that the number of Xi researchers leaving the U.S. has grown since the U.S. Department of Justice launched its Xi initiative in 2018. It says there have been significant increases of Xi origin scientists returning to Xi's country in recent years, despite them wanting to contribute to science and research in the United States. Well, this kind of fits into how we covered previously in the last few weeks that Xi's country is putting Chinese police stations all over the world in other countries, and those police stations are being accused of, allegedly, trying to coerce people back, or if there's criminals there, they try to get them back to the country, or they scare them. But also, I would think that would fit into this. Dex, what do you think about that?
That's exactly what I thought at first. It's either they're worried about being busted for espionage, they're worried about, or maybe they're doing something like that and they need to get back before they get hit, or it's because these police stations that are being opened. And I just found this was just happened in the last day, but I just found it now. They actually opened one in New York. So it says the headline is China establishes police station in New York City. So we've covered this with, I think it was in Ireland was the first one. Then we've had 3 or 4 of them in Canada. So we've covered it. It's the same story, but it's now in New York.
Wow. And by the way, we covered in, we covered in Canada. We covered in Mexico. We covered in Europe in several parts. So I'm really surprised to see in New York. Those are police stations that they say, they're kind of an arm of Xi's country. I also think back to that movie Dragon Day. If you haven't seen the 2013 low-budget film Dragon Day, go and watch it just for the plot. Obviously, it's not, the most amazing acting. It's a low-budget film. But the actual idea, if you just put that down on paper, that is a very scary idea because it is a very realistic idea, especially considering what they are finding out about TikTok, what they are finding out about all of the technology coming out of that country. If even a quarter of the stuff they rumor is true, then we all need to have a plan. Like a serious plan. And then FBI sent to the Pacific as U.S., Australia, and Japan stand up to China's bullying. Dex, why don't you cover this one? This is odd. Anywhere FBI goes, you kind of wonder.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious, trying to understand exactly why it's the FBI. But apparently, there's a $810 million aid that includes a pledge of $2.8 million fund for FBI training with the Pacific states, specifically around what's happening with the bullying from Xi's country. So I guess it's specific with the FBI because I guess it wouldn't be the military going in and training our own states, but it's kind of also interesting as we think about the other island nations that may be included in this. And you've got, whether it's Australia and Japan that are agreeing. I don't know if our FBI is being included in with them or if it's just that they're including them in our own states. But this whole notion of, getting prepared and standing up to Xi, it kind of goes back to this. We just talked about the fact that they opened a police station, as they're not calling it that, but everyone else is, in New York. And by the way, I put that on the website for you guys. So if you want to see the proof of it, it's there. Same story we've already talked about in Canada, but it's here. So yeah, this is definitely, when you deal with Australia, you're dealing with the Solomon Islands. When you're dealing with the U.S., it's the Western, the West Coast. There's a lot of influence there, whether it was property buying, whether it's the influence in Hollywood and Silicon Valley and other locations. And you've got other countries involved too, like Japan. Obviously, they have their own issues at a much stronger issues with Xi's country.
And so you can obviously see everybody's siding up. Everybody is picking their side here. Defense ministers of the United States, Australia, and Japan have agreed to boost military cooperation to counter Xi's influence across Asia Pacific. So we'll follow if there's any other kind of moves forward with that. And then this was huge. NK fired a ballistic missile over Japan, and Tokyo urges residents to evacuate. It says that out of NK, they fired a ballistic missile over Japan and Tokyo and urged residents to evacuate as fears of war between the U.S., South Korea, and Kim Jong-un's deranged regime grow. It said that NK fired an unidentified ballistic missile over Japan, prompting a warning for residents to take cover and temporary suspension of train operations in the northern part of the country. Imagine that, where you're about to board a train and they say, sorry, this train is no longer running or will not be temporarily because a missile was just launched. It says the Japanese government warned citizens to take cover as the missile appeared to have flown over and past its territory early Tuesday before falling into the Pacific Ocean. This isn't an old story. This is them doing it yet again. It didn't hit before. It actually went over, which they did during T-Man's reign as well. I don't know if they're doing this to try to push the buttons of this current admin, but this current admin is just cuckoo. I mean, who knows what's really going on in the background with this one, right? We kind of had an idea with the last one, but this one, I have no idea what's going on as far as who's really in charge. It says the Japanese government, of course, said that South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said that the launch was made on Tuesday morning, but gave no further details about how far the weapon flew. Well, it flew at least over the island, but they actually told people to evacuate. If you have video of this, if you are in Japan watching, if you have video of the alarms going off or a text message sent or anything like that, please send it to us at adam@marfooglenews.com or dex@marfooglenews.com. If you have video, go over to marfooglenews.com/playmyvideo and let us see it. We will show it on the show for sure. NK views such drills as an invasion rehearsal, through Seoul and Washington say they are defensive in nature. So this is shortly after, obviously, Kamala, survival game, Ilea, I'm looking at you. I said it right this time. Kamala, it sounds like common law. Kamala, when she visited the DMZ just a few days ago, they actually launched, I believe, one and then two after she stopped and sat there for 10 minutes looking at nobody. She went to the DMZ, the same place where T-Man shook hands with Kim, only no one showed up, no one came out, and then they rushed out of there like there was an emergency, even though nothing really happened. And then they said, apparently they've got ballistic missiles. And then they launched two more. That was again around the same time that NK said that they changed their laws, and if they even smell something wrong, if they believe that somebody slipped something in Kim's drink, they'll send nukes. If they feel a baseball was thrown at the wrong window in their at their building, and it's where Kim is, they will launch nukes. They essentially said for any reason, if they think that they are trying to take out any part of their government, whether it be publicly or covertly, that they will launch nukes at whoever they think it is. That, and it, by the way, it wasn't saying like they would. It was saying that it would be automatic, that it would just happen. And obviously, look at that from two different ways. They could be puffing their chest. They could also be doing it because they're afraid of somebody actually doing it. The drills that SK and the U.S. are doing, the south of the Koreas, those practices are rehearsals for taking Kim out. So it makes sense that he is afraid. But those drills, of course, have gone on, and they did not happen the last few years. Not since T-Man, I believe since 2017. Dex, what do you think about this missile? This is pretty scary.
Well, it certainly is. And, a lot of people are, wondering what the trajectory was and where it actually landed. All I know is that the earliest reports were saying it was in the east of Japan. So that would literally mean it went over. I think what probably happened is he went really high. Some are saying it's went about 4,600 kilometers. That's a pretty long distance for him, 2,800 or 2,850 miles for a test. But how much of that was up and over versus just straight linear distance. So I don't know how they measure this trajectory, if it's literally the arc or if it's the distance from where it lands. I don't think it's the actual landing, but nonetheless, if you look on a map, from where NK is and where Japan sits, if it landed in, east of Japan, it had to pretty much go over Japan unless it did some sort of, strange zigzagging to just sort of, divert around them, which it didn't do. So this is kind of crazy. This is a big deal. It's, this is going over their space. It's kind of a scary thing.
I also wonder how this warning to the residents go. Of course, the news can take something that may have been minimal and make it maximal. They could have, did a kind of a broadcast saying, we suggest you go, be prepared for something like this, or them saying, please seek shelter. Japan has the loudspeaker system where it says a message in Japanese. That has gone off in 2017. I bet I could have taken a little extra time and gone to Twitter. I bet Twitter has videos of the alerts going off if they did those loudspeakers. Usually those are just plastered everywhere. What's kind of weird to me is that this isn't. I know it is fresher news because when we did that show, it was really, really fresh as it happened. But I just wonder what's going on. By the way, Dex, I wonder if there's any way to find out, was that during nighttime or was that in the day? What time zone is Japan in? I wonder if they would do a nighttime test or if they were doing a daytime test. How many people were out on the street when this happened? Did it go out as a loudspeaker alert? These are all things that I want to find out, and I'll update you on tomorrow at least, and see if there's any videos of it we can show you, possibly Twitter videos that have been uploaded. And then Charity Sullivan, I missed you. Thank you. I appreciate that support. Thank you for the super sticker. Same with Celtic Warrior. Thank you. Mary Lowry, thank you so much again for your support. Redeemed, thank you for the massive support of our channel. I appreciate your support. Thank you for the $20 super chat. I appreciate that. Mary Lowry, again and again, says behind the scenes. That's funny. Thank you so much, Mary. I appreciate that. And then over on DLive, everybody that is hanging out, I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you. Let's see here. Before we get into Sweden, Dex, sorry about that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it was launched at 7:22 a.m. It flew 4,600 kilometers. It was up for about 22 minutes. So that basically hit the 8 o'clock, business hour. So it's pretty much rush hour. People are taking the trains or heading into work. This is coming from the Japanese officials. So, and they said it traveled as high as 621 miles. So I didn't know that a minute ago when I was asking how far its trajectory was. So 621 miles high. 2,800 miles in distance, about 22 minutes in the air, and it was about 7:30 in the morning.
Thank you, Dex. And as always, if you're new to the show, we always have a bibliography of all of the info as far as all of these articles are over there. So make sure to go, and you can even read along. Our show is I think is cool because from the very beginning of it, that website is up, so you can actually have a second device and read these articles with us. You can point out things in chat, of course. So definitely an interactive aspect to that. Sweden sends diving vessel to probe the leaking Nord. Before we talk about that, I do want to remind you, if you don't have long-term survival food, we have a great resource for you. It is at marfooglenews.com/prep. This is through My Patriot Supply, and they have freeze-dried food with a 25-year shelf life. Again, this is a great deal because you can actually get 72-hour kits, so a 3-day kit you could put in your bag. You can get a 1-month kit. You can even get a 3-month kit. There's all sorts of different packages, and those include everything you need to survive for whatever time period you go for. That means you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It will keep you going. All you need to do in most cases is add water or cook in sauce, and almost all of the flavor is back. Freeze-dried basically removes all of the moisture from the food, and then they seal it. Essentially, that food keeps a ton of its flavor, a lot more than when you dehydrate. Now, again, there's debaters in the prepper niche about which one's better. Freeze-dried usually wins in the flavor category. So it's really, really good, but also it is something that could be useful for just regular things that happen. If inflation goes crazy, that is an emergency where you may end up using your food. In this case, it might not be a disaster. It might just be the currency collapse. It could be any kind of thing. It could be a storm. It could be an earthquake, a hurricane, anything like this, where this could come in handy. Also, the other thing, freeze-dried food is in short supply and in high demand. The price in just the last 3 years since 2019, because of CV-19 and everything that happened afterwards, it just shot up like a rocket. And with the conflict and everything else, it just keeps going up. They have done the best to keep their prices the same. Right now, they have 20% off on everything through our code. But one thing I will say is in 3 years from now, if this price ends up tripling like it did over the last 3 years, you'll still have 22 years left on the shelf. That means you will still have 2 decades of food storage there that will keep you alive. So again, make sure to go check that out, marfooglenews.com/prep. But they have tons of other stuff. They have iodine tablets. They have the Alexa Pure Pro, which again is comparative to the Berkey for a fraction of the cost, and it does all of the same stuff. And I believe it's incredibly fast. It's one of the biggest capacity gravity-fed water filtration systems out there. So make sure to go check that out. And also, make sure to use the code Marfoogle if you do not use our link. All right, and then let's see here. Sweden sends this diving vessel. So, Dex, do you think that they're going to find out something that's off on this? I bet whoever did it probably isn't going to leave too many tracks. And, of course, because right off the bat, they said, oh, Vlad did it. But a lot of people are starting to question that, given the obvious. They could have just turned it off.
Well, I don't think it's going to be easy to clean up a mess if you put some sort of explosion down there, right? That's gonna leave underwater. It may not leave like the residue that you're thinking that you would have at in a crime scene or something like that. But it's going to be sort of obvious if it's that versus a some sort of seismic activity and some underwater earthquake just magically rip things apart down there, right? So I think that's probably what's going to be real telling about this. If they go down, they get images. I'm assuming that they've got some sort of insight and intel already for them to make the statements that they've been making. Because if it's if it wasn't clear, at least now I guess they're going to either go create the evidence that supports them, or they're going to find the evidence that they need that supports the notion. It's also telling, though, that it's Sweden doing it, so that's kind of a third party, so to speak. At least not the U.S. doing it. So if we have the Swedes come back and say, hey, we've looked at it and we've got evidence, we found this evidence, so that's going to add more I guess, credibility, if you want, or at least, independent verification, so to speak, about this. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays into, the bigger picture.
Yeah, I doubt that the story, at least in our country and in Europe and in Australia and in Canada, I doubt the story is going to change from our media's perspective. But I guess we will see. Quick thank you to everybody that ended up supporting this month on PayPal. I appreciate you guys' support. Thank you, Chris G, Claire L, Davis D, thank you, Tracy Q, Linda S, thank you, and thank you, Peter S, Linda P, Amanda B, and Brenda L. Thank you guys. I appreciate your support. A few other notables from the month before: Eddie K, Joanna H, Karen W, Dawn B, Wes of the West, and of course, Anonymous. Again, thank you. And then Europe faces unprecedented risk of gas shortage. Well, kind of obvious on this one. Now, of course, the Nord Stream's obviously not running and damaged now. And it says that Europe faces unprecedented risks to its natural gas supplies this winter after Vlad cut off most pipeline shipments and could wind up competing with Asia for already scarce and expensive liquid gas that comes by ship, the international agency said. It says the Paris-based IEA said its quarterly gas report released Monday that European Union countries would need to reduce use by 13% over the winter in case of a complete Vladian shutoff amid the conflict in UKR. Now, also remember the other ones that are running in some of the other ones are in UKR. So if they're taken over or damaged or anything else, then you really have a risk of it really, really getting screwed. It says much of that cutback would have come from consumer behavior, such as turning down thermostats by 1 degree and adjusting boiler temperatures, as well as industrial and utility conservation, the group said. The EU on Friday agreed to mandate a reduction in electricity consumption by at least 5% during peak price hours. Just a trickle of Vladian gas is still arriving in pipelines through UKR to Slovakia and across the Black Sea through Turkey and Bulgaria. 2 other routes under the Baltic Sea and to Germany and through Belarus and Poland have shut down. So remember that. There's limited resources. Anything that happens, a lot of my American viewers just realize whatever happens to Europe is going to affect all of us. It happens later. Dex, go ahead.
I was going to say, don't always look at this event and what's happening specifically around the natural gas with a lens of conflict and with the lens of Vlad versus the West or NATO versus Vlad or whatever. There's also the other agenda that's going on, right? Which is about
gas,
reducing the use of gas. And so what better way to, you could tell everybody that you need to jump on this bandwagon, which then you have to fight half the people that don't want to buy into it, right? Or you could just force them. And so, we could, under the umbrella of conflict, all of a sudden have this event happen that then forces us to not use as much of that. And then before you know it, we've decreased our amount of use and we've sort of forced everyone to find an alternate, route to heat their home, power their car, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, because here, the people that are in charge on one side of this argument, they've got more power this time around. This 4 years, they've got the power, so they're doing all sorts of stuff in very fast motion. I mean, it's like it's been kicked into gear. It almost seems like it would have had to been planned for decades for things to be changing this quickly in our cultural, society and everything else. It's almost like every last media, social media, and everything that we look and see and hear could have almost been planned for decades. I don't know, though. That sounds a little loopy. That's kind of, tinny. That's like something's bouncing around up there, but it's not brain cells, right? California moves to be the first state to ban natural gas heaters. So, because it's going to be good for, then we're going to go all electric and all sustainable, right? And it's all because of the change. Well, this is what is crazy to me. If you are going off of the mainstream media, which a lot of people push back on, but if you just say you were hypothetically a sheep of all sheep, and you believe everything that is told to you if it's by an approved source, you realize they're telling you we're closing in on the end of the world anyways. We're the fearmongers, even though mainstream media is telling you that we are 9 years from climate chaos and the moon is going to cause catastrophic flooding in 2030 and by 2030 we're going to have all of this crazy stuff, and by 2030 we'll only be able to eat 8 ounces of steak because the whole world is going to change by then, and extreme weather is going to get so bad that you won't be able to live, you won't be able to walk outside in summer, and you'll have to wear a rebreather mask and all this crazy stuff. This is mainstream, and we're the cuckoo. U.S. deploys world's most expensive military ship carrying 9,000 NATO troops. So this is also a very big story. Obviously, we try to watch all of the public deployments that are going on. We try to communicate that and pass that back on to you. If you want to keep track of these things and you haven't hit that red subscribe button and hit the all on the bell, then make sure to do so, because it's getting crazy. Today, the U.S. is deploying one of the world's most advanced aircraft carriers to the Atlantic, complete with nuclear reactors and fighter jets. The USS Gerald R. Ford is sailing from Virginia, USA, to the Atlantic Ocean and carrying NATO strike group. It's unclear whether the launch is linked to the conflict in UKR, but as the carrier cost the U.S. more than $13 billion, a lot of money. The country's Navy is obviously keen to show it off. The ship is powered by 2 nuclear reactors and can carry more than 70 aircraft, including deadly helicopters and jets. Dex, what do you think about NATO deploying on 9,000 NATO on a aircraft carrier? You think this ties into UKR, or does it tie into G and everything else that's going on over there? Do you think they're really they may head there, they may head to the Atlantic, then may head somewhere else, then may head somewhere else?
Well, heading into the Atlantic for now seems like I guess we'll have to wait and see where they're going. But I really have a sneaking suspicion they're heading probably across the Atlantic. And if that's the case, that's pretty eye-opening when we have a NATO strike group, a specific, and this is a huge ship. This is a lot of people. This is a lot of power. And when you do that, it's obviously not just symbolic, but it's also meaningful when it goes into an area where it can perform action, and you're rolling it in there for that reason. So, we do have large groups of our troops that are obviously joined with other troops from around the world in NATO areas that are then controlled by NATO commanders, right? So this is a very big component of that. And if it's being mobilized and deployed and being sent out, it's not, just for a drill or for fun. This is serious. This is probably a big deal. It's probably going in to support specifically if it's going in the Atlantic and it's NATO, it's not heading to the Pacific at all. It's going straight, heading over towards the conflict area that's going on now. And my best guess, and I think it's a logical guess, it's going there to support that and probably to deal with whatever the next step is, whatever the next escalation event is going to happen. There's a lot of speculation on what and when NATO will actually start doing something besides just handing over large amounts of equipment, which is all we've been doing, and sending and munitions and other things, to when we actually NATO countries actually get active in the conflict. And if some of those lines are crossed, which Vlad keeps threatening to cross, that's the open invitation. And I don't know if it's if it's enough what they have with the gas line right now to sort of cause them to go into direct conflict, or if there will have to be something else. And we'll talk about a few of those something else's in later articles. But it's definitely a big sign, I think, when you take this type of equipment and you empower it with NATO troops.
And by the way, it's a carrier never goes by itself. It's going to have a strike group. I assume it's not going to go by itself. It doesn't go into detail, but how a carrier usually works is it's the carrier that has everything, but it needs to be protected because it's vulnerable. So they usually have destroyers and cruisers beside it. Those protect against other things like submarines and different kinds of they basically work as kind of a family, or it's kind of like a team of superheroes where each one has kind of their strength, their pros and cons, and their strengths and weaknesses. So you have the different ships for different, defenses and things like that. Because a carrier sitting out by itself is like a sitting duck. Meanwhile, if it has the other ships that kind of fill in those gaps, then it's something. So not only is it going to most likely be the 9,000, I highly doubt it. I don't even think we move carriers by themselves. But if you know of that, then let me know. I'm not an expert. But if they are going, then it's going to be it's much more than that. It's most likely a whole strike group, and it's all NATO soldiers. So if they get involved in any kind of conflict, then it's on. And then Russian nuclear submarine armed with doomsday weapon disappears from Arctic harbor. Now, I highlighted this earlier in the other show. It says officials warn that Vlad may plan to test Belgorod's Poseidon weapon system, a drone equipped with a nuclear bomb that Vlad has claimed is capable of creating a radioactive tsunami, according to Italian media. Not only a radioactive tsunami, but a 300-foot radioactive tsunami. They can bring it outside of a city of choice, bring this drone somewhere, and it goes boom. The drone goes out, it causes the wave, and it's not only a huge wave, but it's also a radioactive huge wave. Dex, go ahead.
How I wonder how that underwater drone and that radioactive wave would play against another group in the water, like a carrier strike group. Like I know we always think, because we think about how it would impact us, like if it hits land, if it hits our cities, things like that. What would this and what could this do to like we just talked about, the NATO strike group that's going across? Could
Are you saying that
used against them?
Are you saying that maybe we're moving our most expensive, our carriers out, so they're not here, so they're out there because it might not do damage if they're out in the ocean already?
Well, I guess that's one thing you could think about. I wasn't saying that, but that could be an option. But I was wondering, would this, and I don't know enough about the Poseidon, but could it be used as a offense against ships in the water? In other words, one hit in the water and a 300-foot wave takes out an entire strike group, right?
Yeah, like a rogue wave, basically to make a rogue wave and flip all the ships. Also, I thought if you were going to physically invade a country, especially one like the U.S., we have coastal defenses and we have pretty much a lot of things set up. I wonder if you were able to do a 300-foot wave and it was something like Japan, I would think, I don't know, it might actually make it harder, but you would think that if it wipes out stuff on the coastline and defenses and people, and there's so much disaster there, that if you were going to bring troops to the United States, that if you brought it in through that disaster area, you could, land, find a place to get through. But I don't know. That might even make it, even harder to invade or to put your soldiers there. I know that's a big what if of even getting invaded in the first place. But I just thought about it. What is this weapon for? Is it for a pre-invasion type of thing? Like, would they knock it out? What do you think?
Well, and I misspoke, because in the article, well, at least from Vlad's point of view, they say it's a 1,600-foot wave.
What?
Yeah, that's it's in the next paragraph there, but that's what Vlad says. I don't know. if that's how much of that is true, because even a 300 foot would be huge, but 1,600 foot, and I think AZ in chat pointed that out. So thank you for calling me out on that, AZ.
Sorry, and I it's like I skipped it because I remember 300 feet. I just remembered 300. That is insanity. That's the height of 3 Space Needles. That's almost a what is that tower in Las Vegas? Do you remember? You always remind me of the name.
Stratosphere.
The Stratosphere. That's a stratosphere and a half. The Stratosphere is like 900. It would be a whole Space Needle taller than the Stratosphere. It would be 600 feet higher than the Stratosphere, which is 900 something. I don't know if that's the tallest building. That's like, let's design it to where it's the tallest building in the world. Knock it down. That's something out of a movie. That's something out of pictures, like fantasy pictures of a tsunami knocking out a New York or something. That's biblical. That's like a wave from an asteroid. Asteroid hitting the ocean. Like a planet killer asteroid hitting the ocean. Go ahead.
Well, and just think about, and I don't know the stats on this, but how far 1,600 foot wave would actually go inland, right? That's because it's so high. That's pretty far. I got to imagine it's going to reach, and there's a lot of land that's less than 1,600 feet above sea level. Not to say that distance will also cut that off, but still, that's huge.
It almost would remind you of something like, if something like that happened, it would be like the new Navy map. WAZ Conroy, thank you for subscribing and welcome to the Marfia. I appreciate anybody who is new here. Thank you. Darius Hawkins, thank you for subscribing as well. Welcome. And then Stephen McMahon says, I think Joe will be removed from office and Kamalaita will be disqualified. We will have Mrs. Pazuzu as big boss by November. I don't know. I think it would. Who is the? I haven't kept track. Who is number 4? Who, Dex? Do you know who is right behind? If something happened to all 3 of them, who would be in charge then? There's got to be somebody smarter. I mean, younger.
It's the Speaker Pro Tem of the Senate, and I don't know who that is.
Nobody even knows who it is.
It used to be Grassley.
Wow.
But the thing is that it doesn't really work that way. If one gets out and the second goes to number 1, they immediately name a number 2. The only way a position 3 would come in is if 1 and 2 go out at the same time or faster, or without them being able to name a number 2. And by naming, they just have to nominate somebody. It's not like a big process. Or
we get like the designated survivor scenario where everybody gets taken out or something. Kind of like what they tried to make the stuff. What was that? January? It was kind of like that. Only if it was like a bad thing, Ian was only a 12-foot surge. Oh wow, yeah. Somebody, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name there. Who said that? I wanted to give you credit for that. That's a huge point. I mean, that really hits it home. Ian was a 12-foot surge, and it did that amount of damage. 1,600 feet. 1,600 feet. Ian, with 12 feet storm surges, did that. That's incredible. I mean, Cascadia Subduction Zone will wipe out millions, in my opinion. And that is, you're talking 100-foot wave at most. 120, actually, no. The new information says anywhere from 120 to 150. So imagine 1,600 feet. No thanks. No thank you, ma'am. Wham, bam, and no thank you, ma'am. Dex.
Number 4 is Patrick Leahy. He is the Speaker Pro Tem, or I guess called the President Pro Tempore of the Senate. It used to be Grassley, but after that last round, he is in the position because they're split.
Good old Leahy. I don't know why the name Leahy reminds something off of like isn't that a King of the Hill character or something? All right, and then before we move on, Britain to acquire 2 specialist ships to protect underwater infrastructure. Obvious signs that people are basically preparing for something. And by the way, we have talked about this over the last couple of years. I think it's prudent to bring this up now, as far as Vlad supposedly has these underwater drones that also could snip our lifeline or our communications between here and Europe. That is something that's always been talked about. It's been talked about since I started this, and I just wonder if some of these things that are going out in the ocean are because there's a bigger threat of that right now. Like, that's step one. It says Britain to acquire 2 specialist ships. Before I talk about that, I will remind you, right now, our whole show is run on energy power. If you haven't seen this yet, energy is, the Flex 1500 is definitely one of my highest recommendations out of everything here, because this is a solar generator. This is a generator that can keep you going through a storm, through a disaster, through pretty much anything, or it can be brought with you and you can bug out with this thing. It's completely modular. They actually stack like Legos. It is one of the most ingenious setups. Again, there are others that are actually stackable and things like this, but this system has no huge external cords. A lot of the other competitors, not only are they bigger and bulkier and less portable, but once you do end up stacking 2, 3, 4 batteries, you end up having double the footprint because you have these giant cables connecting them. This has the input and the output on the top and the bottom, so they stack like a sandwich. On top of that, they connect, a secure connection together, so you can lift up upwards of 5 of them. They say not to go more than 5, just because obviously the weight is so much that you wouldn't be able to carry it. But this is one of the coolest systems out there, and it, again, is low maintenance. It is absolutely silent. You cannot hear it, even if you're listening. I mean, like, you put your ear on it, you cannot hear anything. That is great as far as going stealth mode and not letting neighbors or, looters from 4 blocks away knowing that you have power. If you've ever been through a big storm, then you know every single neighbor that has a generator, and when your power goes out, you will hear them turn it on. That's not a good thing if you're trying to stay low. Now, I definitely recommend, if you had the choice and if you had the financial ability to have a gas and a solar generator, because there's pros and cons to both, but there's one heck of a lot of pros to solar. First of all, you don't have to buy gas for it. Second of all, there's almost no maintenance. There's no running motors. And third of all, you can charge it several ways. You can charge it from your wall. You can charge it from your car. If none of those exist in the future, you can charge it with your solar panels. As long as you have sun, you have power. And this is really cool. It can be modded out so you can triple the input. It is an absolutely amazing system. I truly 100% not only believe in it, it is part of my prep. So again, make sure to go check it out. Marfooglenews.com/energy with an I, like energy, but with an I, energy. Again, that's marfooglenews.com/energy. You can get upwards of $170 off on different packages, and you're helping our independent channel. We are covering controversial subjects. We are not one of the approved elite channels, so we are not treated the same in algorithms and everything else. So if you can help us in the way of, if you're already going to get something, then try to get it through us. If you're already shopping for something we have as an affiliate, if you get it through us, not only are you getting a discount, but you're helping us at the same time. Everybody wins. It's a great thing. Now, these have had a waiting list. The waiting list, I don't know where it's at right now. Lithium is in high demand and short supply as well. So make sure to get your name on that list if you haven't already. And then also they have in December coming out the Kodiak all-in-one. This thing is really for RVers, for people that if you're on the go or if you want something that's just all built into one unit. This thing has kind of record-breaking features as far as 6,000 charge cycles. You could use this thing from 100% to 0% for 16 years every single day, and it will still have 80% of its capacity. That's pretty freaking awesome. And it's a 0 to 100% in 75 minutes. That's probably faster than most people's phones. All right, and it can power one heck of a lot of stuff. So, Dex, let's talk about this. So, this
the most obvious retaliation, in my opinion.
Yep.
If Vlad thinks the West took out his pipeline, which is his revenue source, the most obvious thing he could do, it would do the same thing underwater to someone else, whether it be telecom, power, gas. I don't know that would make much sense, but power, we know, runs between Britain and France through the water. Telecom runs the lines that connect everybody around the world run from the US over to the UK. There's tons of line that run down there. And then from then into Europe, and from Europe to the US, and obviously on the other side of the globe, they do the same thing. So, yes, that would, to me, seems like it's the obvious next step if he is going to retaliate for what they did. And I'm saying that because that's what he believes. He believes that they're the ones that did it. We don't know who did it. It could just be an act of God for all we know, right? But the point being is now we're seeing. And I was thinking about this, and then boom, it shows up in the news that, obviously Britain is taking this seriously. They're going to put ships, specific infrastructure in place, and specialist ships to go down and protect these lines. So they see the need, obviously.
Funny comment there, by the way. Joseph Newhouse says, hopefully the underwater cables will be, what was that, protected by the megalodons. Oh, I'll see that in a second. Basically, the megalodons are protecting our stuff. I hope. By the way, somebody said about I want to say NH Liberty said it better be in a Faraday cage. I think you were talking about the generators. By the way, that they've thought of that too. EMP Shield makes a specific EMP Shield for the energy solar generators. So if you do want to protect them against EMP or CME, in fact, in a Flex 1500, is the only solar generator you can get an EMP Shield for. So that's huge, from brand name EMP Shield. All right, and then so the Nord Stream is being used for a whole lot of different things. As far as there's a lot of progress being made in some would say a really bad direction because of these pipelines. And then half of mobilized men in Russian regions sent home. Commissar fired. Dex, I am so confused. Half of the mobilized men got sent home?
Well, in this particular region, and so they fired the guy in charge of it. Obviously, all these people being called up, and he let half of them go, claiming they didn't meet the criteria. And then the region's governor said, boom, you're fired. You didn't do your job right.
What I think is funny, the tiniest guy in the picture is the one that's like, I'm ready to go. He's in full camo. He's got the backpack. He's got the gear. He's ready to go. This guy, I swear, has is that a MERS? I don't know. Yeah, these guys look like they were straight plucked from REI. Yeah, or their version.
How old is the guy on the right?
Well, I mean, gray can be deceiving. He looks 64, maybe. I mean, that's still fighting age.
He's not 20.
In fact, there's two guys that look like they're 20. All the rest look like they're in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. What is their fighting age? I thought doesn't it go up to like 35, or are they in their 40s? Do they go up to 41 or 42 or something? I
think they'd have us believe it's like 80, but...
So he didn't say like, oh, you guys can go home because we don't need you. He said, you guys go home because you guys are not fit for anything. That's pretty bad. And then, expert, if Vlad uses nukes, U.S. could wipe out Vlad forces in UKR. So this is it says if Vlad makes good on his threat to use nuclear weapons in UKR, the United States would likely respond with a sweeping economic embargo combined with massive conventional attack. Okay, there we go. On Vlad's military positions that could quickly wipe out the Vlad's invading military forces, said Joseph Circione, a national security analyst and leading expert on nuclear warfare. It said the U.S. and NATO could destroy the Vlad's forces in UKR in a matter of days. Cercione, author of the book Nuclear Nightmares, Securing the World Before It Is Too Late, in an interview on the Yahoo News Skullduggery podcast. It says that would be the end of the Russian army in this. I don't see how something like this would be said, though. Like, they just think that they could wipe them out. I think it would be a little bit more complicated than that, since they have allies. If they did get involved, then other countries would get involved. But also, everybody's making Vlad's country seem like the weakest army ever. I mean, even back in WW2, they had some crazy fighting force. You never want to underestimate your enemy, and that should be the main point. I'm pretty sure that they have put half their GDP into their military for years and years and years, so they are heavily invested. Meanwhile, other countries, don't want to say which one, but some of them were actually retiring things and cutting their budget and essentially, letting their military fall apart. So, not good. As far as what the expert says, what do you think, Dex? Do you think he's right?
Well, this was sort of the idea that I was saying earlier, is that if he does cross certain lines, what would we do, right? He said if we cross all these lines, he's going to do all these things, but he never does them because we cross all these lines, right? But if he does it, let's say he, does launch a tactical and that goes off, what is our response going to be? I think that's sort of the question. Like, I don't think we would necessarily think the answer is to just completely annihilate, his country with a bunch of nukes, because that's just going to in turn create something else, right? That would just be a no-win situation. But what would we do? Would we, go full conflict? Is that why, the ship's going over there? Is that why there's hundreds of thousands of, of troops under control in NATO areas around there that have all been gathered and ready at the border? Is that the next step, right? That's sort of the question. What happens when that line gets crossed?
By the way, I think it's funny. It says Cercione said that the U.S. military response would not be limited on the battlefield. There would also be likely a sharp escalation in psychological warfare, such as was used to unnerve Iraqi generals on the eve of the U.S. invasion of that country. The U.S. was calling Iraqi generals in their home and telling them to stand down. And they did that for two reasons. One, to let them know, we know where you live, right? Two, we can reach out and touch you. So first of all, there was a clip of T-Man. T-Man personally called some people, and I want to say that that's what it's referencing. And he basically said if it wasn't that? Wasn't that when there's an interview with T-Man and he said, "Oh yeah, I called him and I said I sent him a picture of his house." Saying, and they're like, why would you do this? And say, well, because we know where you live and we know where you are. And they sent T-Man sent direct coordinates of where the guy was that he was talking to and said, I know where you are right now. And it scared the crap out of them. And for 18 months, they didn't lose a single person. So I don't know. I think it kind of worked. T-Man was, he had some cojones. Meanwhile, that were still outside of the body. So we'll see what happens. And then Vlad faces irreversible reality in UKR invasion despite latest moves. There's always these pieces. I personally think this is, there's all these super just one-sided opinions right now. Of course, if you have the other opinion or anything else besides the opinion, then you are carrying somebody's water or you are on the wrong side. I think that there should be a debate and questions asked about every narrative, but that's just me. It says that Vlad now faces an irreversible quagmire amid the country's land grab in its ongoing invasion of UKR. And guess where this is coming from? Retired Army General and former CIA Chief David Petraeus said on Sunday. It says Vlad is losing despite significant but desperate moves in the conflict that began in late February, Petraeus told ABC this week. It says President Zelensky and UKR have mobilized vastly better than Vlad did, Petraeus said. UKR has recruited, trained, equipped, organized, and employed force incomparably better than Vlad did. Regardless of Putin's bravado, Petraeus said no amount of annexation, no amount of even veiled nuclear threats can get him out of this situation. So one thing that I think is true here is that it's irreversible, that you can't really go back from what's been done. That's my opinion. It says, asked by Carl if Vlad could win in its conflict with UKR, Petraeus said he did not see how they cannot. There is nothing Putin can do at this point. Says he's saying really can't. Says Putin said he was forever annexing 4 regions of UKR, a move denounced by UKR, the U.S., and other countries. And in late September, the Vladian leader said he was calling up 300,000 reservists to bolster the effort, triggering protests across his country, and ended up now saying 1.2 million, which, by the way, we read in the fine print of that order that it was up to 1.2. It actually ended up being, true, right? In a rare acknowledgement Thursday, Vlad admitted mistakes in how the mobilization was carried out, but he argued again in a speech Friday that the invasion was crucial to preserving Vlad against what he described as the enemy in the West. So he's heavily saying that this is not just UKR, this is the West. In his mind, he is battling us, not anybody else. So that's what kind of gets me, is like, if he does end up talking people behind closed doors, and there really is a two-side thing here, that is what's called a WW3. Meanwhile, UKR forces buttressed. I like that. Nice word, dude. Buttressed by billions of weapons and funding from the U.S. and European allies, have made steady, territorial gains since the counteroffensive that started last month. Dex, by the way, David Petraeus also said some other kind of freaky stuff. Also, I forgot to give that to you. There was a tweet after the pipeline, which kind of goes into this, since we just talked about the pipeline, by the, what was it? The Polish, oh no, was it the Swedish former Ministry of Defense? If you guys know it, please tell me in the chat. It was a Ministry of Defense of one of the European countries, and said, put a picture of the pipeline bubbling up and said, "Thanks, USA." Basically, him in his position stating that, basically said like, hey, this is who's responsible. That was pretty, that's kind of a big deal. But David Petraeus, he's also a big name in this, although it's, again, former CIA. Dex, do you have an opinion on David Petraeus and what he's saying?
He's just yet another former leader, whether it be general or whether it be CIA, etc., to come out and make these statements. We get one about every couple of days now about Vlad's position and how he's sort of backed himself into a corner, et cetera, et cetera. I think the Thanks USA, wasn't that a former MFA from Poland? That's what I just looked up. Yeah. Foreign Ministry of Poland, I believe.
Okay, yeah, I said Polish, Swedish or something. So it was Poland, which is kind of freaky considering was Poland handing out iodine and all that kind of stuff too, and all this other crazy stuff?
Yeah.
Yep. So lots of weird things going on here. 1 second, I just want to pull this up real quick. All right, and I apologize. Dex. Thank you, Jem. I appreciate the ice cream there. Dex, if you can get me the top 3 on DLive, the system wasn't working, so it wasn't showing me what was going on DLive. And then moving on, yeah, let's see here. All right, so with that being said, with everything that's happening there, obviously people need to look at their inventories, look at what is kind of going on in the world. I hope people are actually making a plan. This isn't to scare people. I would say that most of us know that we'll have some sort of notice. I think that mainly if something does happen by surprise that we are not expecting, most of you here already are kind of on the same page. A lot of you have preps. I was really surprised when I asked my mods, even my mods that necessarily aren't doing too well financially. They have done an extremely good job at preparing, and that's because they just did a little bit at a time and they were smart with it. They used information that's openly available here, and they watched the right creators, and they were able to find really good deals on really good survival food and things like this. And they kind of did it themselves as far as they were able to really get themselves prepped. But people really need to start thinking about emergency plans. Doesn't matter where you are in the world at this point. So that's just a small piece of advice for what it's worth. I'm not anybody special, but I will tell you this, we've followed this for a long time, and we have a lot of people following us that know a whole lot more information than we do, and they're telling us to get our stuff ready. Dex, go ahead.
The top 3 are in screener.
Okay, thank you so much. Dex, have you talked to your family about kind of other, I know you guys do your personal thing and you've been planning and getting that kind of stuff, but what about your extended family?
I reach out to lots of friends and other people, and we do talk about this. And it's clear there's a lot of people that have their head in the sand, and there's a lot of people that are aware, and there's a lot of people that are sort of waking up, if you want to use that term, and starting that things are getting more obvious in this world. As well, with it. You start feeling the economic issues, so you start looking around and then realizing things are going on, or maybe you start paying attention to the conflict issues that are going on, and that wakens you up. But there's plenty of people that are sort of coming to light, so to speak, with things now. That's for sure. I've seen that quite a bit.
Well, we also I'm pretty surprised at the amount of people that actually left us 2 or 3 years ago, people that watched my channel, old school Foogle fam, that left and thought that this was all kind of, after a while they said, it's not happening. People have come back, and they said that it's pretty crazy how they remembered fresh, because they stopped watching for a while. They remembered fresh in their brain my older videos, and they said, this is insane. This is the stuff that the Foogle family called. It wasn't exactly all me too. It was the community, because we're driven by the community. So the information that you guys funnel through, we're extremely careful about just repeating stuff. We don't just repeat everything. We don't repeat every single date. If we did, we would be pretty much every day we would say the world would end in a week. But we have been really picky and try to pick stuff that is not only said, say if we have one military member say it, we don't repeat that. It depends. There's only 1 or 2 people that we really are like, these are people we just, if they tell us something, it's like gospel. But there's if we see one military member, a Foogle fan member that says, hey, this might be going on, we wait until we get 2 or 3 or 4 people saying the same thing from different places in the country before we even come close to repeat that. So, but the stuff that was said years ago, I couldn't believe how Foogle fam members ended up kind of predicting this stuff as it happened. And that's because we are a community, and you guys are a huge part of this. So I don't even think that we could have called as much of the stuff if it wasn't for our community members. So it's really, really quite unbelievable how much has actually happened in just the last 4 years. Thank you, Scooby-Doo Right. You are number 1 currently over on DLive. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you for going above and beyond. I appreciate that. Jammer, you don't have to. Man, that's huge. Thank you for kind of stepping in and supporting. You don't have to. J-Girl, that's me. Thank you so much as well. I appreciate you. Kimbry, I'm sure you were in there somewhere. Also, Priscilla R, thank you. Vicky K, thank you. Everybody else over there on DLive. Jared ES13, thank you, and thank you for subscribing. WAS Conroy, Darius, I appreciate you. 0X or Ox, again, it's actually space, so I think it's 0X, thank you. And then Mary, thank you. Nikki Love, again, thank you for subscribing, and welcome to the Foogle fam. Dex, let's see here. So we have a lot of stuff in web only, a lot of stuff to go over, and we do need to thank Simply Pony for the super thanks he did on yesterday's show. Thank you. Again, thank you. Sandy Langer, Bones and Tubbs Show. And then thank you again to Chris G, Claire L, Davis D, and then, of course, Linda S over on PayPal. Appreciate your support this month. Thank you. And the web only is all available on our website. Dex, you can kind of go over that right now.
Certainly. Head over to marfooglenews.com. Click on the thumbnail for the show or open up the show notes link in the description on YouTube. It'll take you right here. Scroll down past all of the news we just covered. Remember, everything we've talked about, we have a source for. Then you'll get to this overflow where you can find the rest of the story, everything we couldn't fit into the show or some topics that just aren't necessarily things we're going to be able to cover right here. Definitely some additional updates on Vlad and what's happening there. Quite a few. When we get back into the political spectrum of things that are going on and things that have happened in January and other stuff and T-Man, all of those updates are right there with what's happening there. There's potentially some banks looking at default. Credit Suisse is one of them. You can find out about that. Updates in the home forecasts and home pricings and where some of the biggest drops are right now. What's happening and why specifically California pays so much for their gas. If you're curious about that, an interesting article about that as well. That and so much more. A new tropical storm may be forming. We'll find out. It's still real early. It's just a disturbance at the moment, but we're going to be tracking that, and they're already tracking it. That and a lot more. So head over to marfooglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, scroll down to that overflow section. You get to the rest of the story, especially if you're on YouTube. It's so easy. It's one click. It's right there in the description. It's called Show Notes.
All right. Thank you, Dex, and thank you for your service today. I appreciate it. And, of course,
great job, brother.
Thank you to the mods that have kept it a peaceful place down in the chat. Thank you to everybody that popped in, whether it be early or late. Thank you for the people that stayed the entire show. Murphy's Law, Kathleen Bemis, Lord Malphus, Bobby Sue Fry, Ijoles Frijoles. Yeah, let's go. We jamming. And 411, Dustin Royal, Crazy Eyes Yoshi, Sleigh Bell, Deep State of Mind, Tesla, Prayers Open Doors, Trinity, Red Pill, Blue Pill, Hi-Ho, Kermit the Frog here, Rob Mills, San Diego Scott. I'm going to get more excited as we say more names. Sonic Boom! Okay, it's time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout-out. It's a shoutro. Trying to open the right thing here. Neil Nelson, thank you. Sorry, and I did miss you. Catherine Leary says, whoa, Catherine, you didn't have to do that. Thank you for your support. Appreciate that. Thank you for supporting Independent. Catherine Leary, a full-scale nuclear war between the U.S. and Russia would see global food systems obliterated. Over 5 billion people perish of hunger. A global study led by Rutgers climate scientists estimate post-conflict crop production August 17, 2022. Catherine Leary, I don't know if we've actually covered that, so I will get that on tomorrow's show if I can find it. And then Stephen McMahon, I think Joe will be removed. Kamalita will be disqualified, and we'll have Mrs. Pazuzu. Cheryl Beth Carter, whomever is in charge of the U.S. petrodollar, that person blew up the Nord. And then thanks one more time to our great mods, Stephen McMahon. Thank you, and thank you. Thank you, everybody else. I appreciate you. It's shoutro time.
Don't care what your mama told you, this is gonna be bad. Better have yourself and your family a plan. I don't care what your mama told you, this is gonna be bad. Better have yourself and your family a plan. I don't care what your mama told you, this is gonna be bad. Better
It was all the way from under down back. I know
is that? See, on the bread is off and on the sundry wires. In the Bobby Griffiths, in the Mr. Styles, in the wood, now back with the simply pony. Everybody don't get no faulty on the bread for rat in the operation. On the brain back on the kung fu grats off the on the drop of dudes. I got it back now, do on the Cambria and the Northern girl. I did it back now with the Lemon J and the caramel clean. I lays up on say ya. I said, told you this is gonna be bad. Better have yourself and your family a plan. I don't care what your mama told you, this is gonna be bad. Destroy, destroy.
Hey, tinfoil hat, Lord Andrew, Trinity, Cheryl Akins. Tonight's top supporters, Catherine. Thank you. Catherine Larry, Catherine Larry, Catherine Larry, Catherine Larry. Catherine Larry, 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 Catherine Larry. Stephen McMahon, Cheryl Beth Carter, Stephen McMahon, and it's getting harder. Mary on the lottery, Neil Nelson winning the lottery.
But your mama told you this is gonna be bad. Better have yourself and your family a plan. I don't care what your mama I love you with a warm or cold. I'll say it again until it gets so old. I love you with a warm or cold. I'll say it again until it gets so old. I love you with a warm or cold. I'll say it again until it gets so old. I love you with a warm or cold, and I'll say it again until it gets so old. I love you with a warm or cold, and I'll say it again until it gets so old. I love you with a warm or cold, and I'll say it again until it gets so old. I love you with a warm or cold, and I'll say it again until it gets so old. I got to know the Nicky Love and the Hollis Jesse and the Brendan Zola. Send it wireless background, it's about the love, not the cashola. I see the background, yeah, delicious and bone. Prayers open doors and everybody knows. Hey, I Joseph Newhouse, deep state of mind and Neil Nelson. I said a Murphy's Law, a Trinity Red, a Bill Pill, hi ho, coming to a frog here. AW, I stand, bring it right back and everybody win. Everybody wanna go, no, I said it born, no, I said it no, I said it on for the perfect cheer. Kathleen Demas is here. A red heifer and an Adonai and a crab duster and I must say, Patrick's 421. Big cheers for Murph and the love the one. Scorpion and the elder, yeah. Shannon will answer all your questions. Join them back with the Michael Johnson, have field now and the truth. I arrest there. I've been simple glue and everybody I knew you. I love you with a warm or cold. I'll say it again until it gets so old. I love you with a warm or cold. I'll say it again until it gets so old. I love you with a warm or cold. I'll say it again until it gets so old. I love you with a warm or cold. I'll say it again until it gets so old. I love you with a warm or cold. I'll say it again until it gets so old. I got to bring it with the bottle and the Gokes and the Natalie D. Karen Winkler, I'm big and big night. I saw a rebel in the white, oh yeah. Fade away in the mama wolf and then the wang wang dang doodle land. So I said, oh now back in the going back. I lit a hope in the walking truth. Gotta walking truth, and if you ain't a fool, you got my Fugle news. GD in the bang bang army, but track a god that gang. Wolf now, Chance Paladin and now, Kathleen Bemis pairs, open doors. Hey, I rap music, girl, my clean love, man, yeah. I love you with a warm or cold, and I'll say it again until it gets so old. Rain's rolling on Vegas lights, and then the slaying for the music, staying the rock. I got a Michael Johnson in the thanks for shout out. Everybody knows God, I know. I ain't buying on the pepper.